And joining us now is Wisconsin Court of Appeals Judge Pedro Cologne. Judge Cologne, thank you for joining us. We heard a little from Border Czar Tom Homan earlier this morning. He was also asked about this judge arrested there in Wisconsin. Let's listen to that.
ICE has been clear we're targeting public safety threats and national security threats. I can't believe there's any elected official, and especially a judge, that doesn't believe we should be doing that, and they should be helping us. But I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, and I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted.
Judge Cologne, how do you see this move by the administration to now prosecute a fellow judge, a colleague of yours there in Wisconsin?
Well, it turned out to be a spectacle, really. The reality is 80–90% of criminal cases, all cases in the United States, are resolved in local courts, in circuit courts. And so we balance a lot of things. There's a lot of defendants, there's a lot of victims, there's a lot of police, a lot of presence that we usually collectively get together to work out so that we can essentially get to peace in our communities. Really what we're doing is, number one, protecting the law, number two, and making sure everybody has equal access to the law, and secondly, we're making sure that our communities are safe. And so when you have a branch of government who comes in and essentially arrests with up to, I believe, more than 10 officers, a judge for essentially what is a nonviolent offense that's been alleged, and it's been sort of dissected by many people, and it's not believed to be a dangerous situation in any way, and this person is handcuffed out of court, you really get concerned. And it really becomes very difficult to maintain peace in our communities when people, or in this case, the federal government through ICE, comes into our courts and disrupts our proceedings.
So the Trump administration alleges that Judge Dugan helped this target of an ICE arrest leave her courtroom out of a side door. They said this is obstruction. He was ultimately arrested outside the courthouse. But based on what is in this indictment, in your view, did this judge do anything wrong?
Well, I don't want to speak to the merits of the case. That's before a judge, and a judge will decide that. Ultimately, I'm just here to tell you that Judge Dugan is an upstanding member of our community. I've worked with her for many years. She's really a fair judge. She comes to work every day on time, like we all do, to do really tough calendars, dealing with a lot of criminal behavior. And that's what all judges do across the nation. Now, you know, regarding the allegations, that's up to the court to decide whether they're valid or not. But based on my review, the fact that you arrest a judge out of court in the courthouse, it's just really symbolic of trying to send a message, I believe, to chill the courts, to actually have the courts, like you just heard Mr. Holman talk to you, succumb and give the federal government more rights as it relates to legal proceedings. And that's not going to happen in Milwaukee, and I suspect that's not going to happen in any place in Wisconsin. And I suspect circuit court judges across the nation are just going to do their work. And their work requires that everybody sort of is evenly, the cases are evenly decided, and that we measure the rights that are in front of us. People are accused of many things. People have many disputes. But when you have a federal agency wanting more access than it's due, then you have a real problem. Normally, these things get resolved. We work with the federal government at all levels. All policing units do. And really, we resolve these issues. I don't understand what it requires, this sort of offensive, you know, power show of power and might, when the reality, we all want healthy communities and we all want safe communities.
We have seen this administration clash with the courts over a bunch of different issues, but in particular immigration, when it comes to whether some of these migrants have due process. And over the weekend, Secretary of State Marco Rubio insisted there is still due process in this country. Here's what he said.
Is everyone on U.S. soil, citizens and non-citizens, entitled to due process?
Yes, of course. But let me tell you, it looks in immigration standing, the laws are very specific. If you're in this country unlawfully, you have no right to be here and you must be removed. That's what the law says.
Judge, is that your experience right now in the court system? Are people being afforded due process across the board?
Well, there's two layers of law that are required to be sort of weighed. And what I think Mr. Holman doesn't understand is that when he walks into court, whether it's the federal government, whatever form it comes, it's just another party. It's a party. And we have to sort that out. And so the defendant has rights. The state has rights. The victim has rights. And whoever wants to be involved in a courtroom, like they sought to be in Hannah Dugan's case, Judge Dugan's case, then we have to sort that out. And we have to sort that out in a way that's fair for everyone. So we can't just allow access to any party to the courts in whichever manner they want. So to the extent that it's due process, well, the immigration laws are there and we must abide by them.
Joining us now, NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, who's covering the White House. Ashley Parker, staff writer for The Atlantic. Her interview with the president is the June cover story. Also with us, Carlos Curbelo, former Republican congressman from Florida. So, Vaughn, what else is the White House saying about all this?
Right. Well, number one, Jose, there is now an express pattern here that we have seen from this administration over the last weeks, making claims about individuals who they have removed or sought to remove from the United States. In the instance of some individuals who they had claimed had gang affiliations, yet it presented no facts or no details as to their connections. And now in this case, you have the individuals, the mothers, denying through their legal representation that they made the decision to have their children be removed from the country to Honduras with them. In the case of one 4-year-old boy who is receiving cancer treatment. And from the administration standpoint, they have continued over the last weeks, and including here today from Tom Homan and Caroline Leavitt, making the case that these were individuals who were, number one, in the country illegally in an undocumented status. And that is where the family members who have been deported with them are, by nature, going to suffer the consequences of the decisions that their parents, or in the case that these mothers, made to come into the United States and have their children here despite being undocumented. I want to let you listen to the press secretary earlier this morning.
This president is trying to simply enforce our nation's immigration laws and is facing roadblock after roadblock. So we're complying with court orders, but as Tom Homan has said every day, we're going to continue to forge ahead with this mass deportation campaign, and the president is open to all remedies to do that.
And again, the question here is, to what extent is the administration following court orders? Kilmar Abrego Garcia remains in El Salvador, and in the case of these three young U.S. citizen children, they have already been removed from the United States and are already in Honduras, Jose.
So, Carlos, I'm just wondering, because, you know, Donald Trump and Tom Homan, for the entire presidential election, were talking about something like this. If it ever happened, that would be the outcome, right? U.S.-born children, and if their parents are undocumented and are being deported, they have the choice to whether bring them along or not. But the question is the due process issue. And I'm just wondering, Carlos, do you think this is going to have some kind of weight in the White House? Carlos, I'm not hearing you. I don't know if... Check the mute button there for a second.
It was not the mute button, but what I was saying is that while the administration understands that there's still broad public support for aggressive enforcement of immigration law in this country, they also know that there's a breaking point. And these human stories, I remember this from the first Trump term when I was serving in Congress, when the child separation policy shocked so many Americans. That's when the administration lost the public on the immigration issue. The immigration issue has been Donald Trump's signature issue, his strongest issue. The country's willing to be patient with him and with Republicans as they try to correct some of the excesses of under the previous administration. But once these human stories really start connecting with the public in a very dramatic way, then that becomes a danger zone for the administration. They could lose the public, and that, of course, could be bad news for congressional Republicans as they head into the next election.
Actually, in your interview for The Atlantic, you asked the president what would happen if his administration accidentally deported the wrong person, a legal resident or even a U.S. citizen. He said, quote, "Let me tell you that nothing will ever be perfect in this world." What do you think he meant by that?
I think he meant that the administration will make mistakes. As The Atlantic reported, they have already in court filings, for instance, admitted that they've made mistakes, that the Maryland father who was deported to a prison in El Salvador, that was a quote unquote administrative error. That was a mistake. It was an interesting response. And in fact, if you believe that nothing in life will be perfect, that is in fact an argument for due process.
And actually, I just want to know because, you know, it is such an unusual, right, thing that the president would sit down with The Atlantic and you know, give you and your colleagues so much time to do it. Well, unusual because of, you know, there's been no love lost from the president towards The Atlantic. Take us into that room. Take me into that moment in that interview.
Sure. So for our cover story, the backstory is kind of wild. So I'm just going to start a little back before that Oval Office interview. We're doing a cover on President Trump. We wanted to explain his remarkable political comeback and how he is wielding power now. We had put in for an interview request, as you would with any White House. We were tentatively told we had one. Then right as we were about to go in, this is about a month or two ago, someone showed the president some things I had said and written that he didn't like. And he very publicly on Truth Social canceled that interview, attacking me and my co-author, Michael Shearer, by name. We then were able to get the president's cell phone number. Michael called him on a Saturday morning in Bedminster. It's an unknown number to the president. He picked up, said hello, and spoke with Michael for 20 minutes. So we had that interview. And then after the story had closed and gone to the presses, we actually got a call last week from an aide to the president who said, "Are you guys free, along with your boss, editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, tomorrow, you know, a day away, to come into the Oval Office and interview the president?" We were told.
So the judge, what she did was, again, she exposed Trump brilliantly. She did. By being arrested by Trump, she exposed him. And then he did it again. A lot of people who were like, I'm not sure if it's fair to call Trump a tyrant. I know that sounds ridiculous because we've seen the writing on the wall going all the way back to 2017, but certainly a lot of people, most of you, let me know if I'm mistaken. Write in the comments if this is your experience. If you weren't in the Trump's a tyrant camp in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, you became so after November 2020 and into J6 and for the last 4 years as he spouted the big lie and wanted to free the insurrectionists and all of that. But a lot of people, guys, because again, the country reelected this monster, said, well, I don't know if he's a tyrant. I think maybe the Democrats are exaggerating. Well, the second he said, I rule this country and I rule the world, and also I'm going to arrest judges, that doesn't sound like an American president. That sounds like an Austrian painter from the 1930s who moved to Germany and grew a little mustache. And guys, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that.